Hello and welcome to Queen of Spades Garden Care. I'm Anna and this is where I share tips and tricks on what to do in the garden. Today we're looking at making a cold frame. A cold frame can be really useful in winter to protect plants and cuttings from the frost over the colder weather. Today I'm going to be showing you how you can make one out of an old pallet and a piece of Perspex. Before we get started, here are a few things we might need. A pallet, a Perspex sheet, a crowbar, a hammer, a drill, some weatherproof screws, and any drill bits you might need. Extra pieces of equipment I found I needed included a wood saw, a bow saw, some wooden beams, and 4 palm-sized stones. The first thing I needed to do was to take apart the pallet. This I did by using the crowbar and hammer to prise apart the pieces of wood. I found the best way to do this was to line up the crowbar with where each of the nails were and lift at those points. The best way to avoid splitting the wood is to hammer in the crowbar at 45 degrees to the grain. After removing each panel, the nails will be poking out, so be careful not to injure yourself. I found that I couldn't take the nails out safely, so instead I hammered them down so they weren't going to injure anyone. Once everything's been taken apart, it's time to plan the assembly. I ended up with 8 thinner panels and 3 thicker ones, so I decided to use 4 thin ones for the long sides and use the rest to make up the short sides. Here I'm deciding which ones should go on the top, middle and bottom and how they should be arranged. Some of this wood wasn't quite up to scratch and I wanted to make sure the strongest ones are on the bottom to make it most sturdy. As I decided to use the 3 thicker pieces to make up the 2 short sides, I had to cut each of them in half. I marked the rough midpoints with a pencil and drew a guideline. To start off each cut, I used a wood saw, as this has thinner teeth and is easier to get going. Once I'd made a straight groove, I moved on to using a bow saw. This has wider teeth and will get through the wood more quickly. After cutting through each of the 3 pieces, I lined them up just to make sure that they were more or less equal in length. I know this might be quite painful for any engineers or perfectionists out there, but it's only a cold frame and I'm sure my plants won't mind. To fix each of my pieces together, I used a piece of wood that I had spare. Not only did it allow me to have something to screw into, but it also gives extra support to the frame. After measuring each piece and cutting them in the same method as before, I laid them out to where I'd like them to go. Then, since I wanted the screw heads to be on the outside of the frame, I laid them out as so. Before putting any screws in, I drilled pilot holes. This makes sure that the wood won't split when you screw in. I used 1 screw per panel to fix them to each of the pieces of wood. I screwed them all in halfway to make sure everything lined up before tightening them. Once all the screws were tight for both the supports, I laid it aside and started on the next one. And, as if by magic, here are all the completed pieces. It's now come to assembly time. To make things easier, I decided to connect each of the long pieces to one of the shorter ones first, and connect two of those larger pieces together to make the rectangle. As you can see here, I'm using masking tape to hold the pieces at 90 degrees before I drill pilot holes and screw them together. I made sure to drill into the wooden supports instead of the pallet wood, as it's stronger and so will hold much better. As with before, I screwed each of the screws in halfway before tightening them fully, and I turned the pieces this way so I could put my weight behind the drill as I tightened the screws in. Once that was done, I took the tape off and continued with the other pieces. With both halves done, I placed them together. Finally, I screwed them together in the same method as before. For the final corner, I carefully turned the whole thing over. I didn't want it all falling apart at this stage. And there we have all the woodwork completed. Now for the final touch of the Perspex lid, and a few weights to make sure it doesn't blow off in the wind. I used a few rocks I had on hand. And that's it, a cold frame made from reclaimed and repurposed material. I placed mine beside the house to protect it from any strong wind and to keep it out of direct sunlight. I'm using it to house my lupin seedlings, all of my cuttings, and any other plants that need protecting. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you'd like to hear more of this sort of thing, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Take care.